welcome to Cindy's Library. And today I am going to talk about The Daughter of Time by Josephine Tey. So you may have heard me say back in January that I read The Man in the Queue by Josephine Tey, which is the first in the Inspector Grant books that she wrote. And I liked it. I didn't love it, but I knew I had to give her a chance again. And this is the book everyone talks about, and they are so right. So, Daughter of Time, it starts with Detective Grant in the hospital with a broken leg and bored out of his mind. Uh, Not a lot to do in a hospital, so friends have sent him books. He doesn't like most of them, but a friend does collect a bunch of pictures, and maybe some of them are photographs. A lot of them, even if they are photographs, they're really of portraits of various people. That keeps him more occupied since he has a fascination with faces. And he becomes fascinated with one face in particular, and he discovers it's the face of Richard III, who has a reputation of being the evil uncle who killed the two princes in the tower, his two nephews. So, I don't say you should go by what this book comes to as far as conclusions go with regards to that. Although I do think if what it says in here is true, there's certainly some things that need explaining at the very least. But being fascinated by this face, which Inspector Grant does not feel is the face of a murder, or at least not that kind of murder, he starts investigating more and more into Richard III, who, from all accounts, in some ways was a pretty impressive person. Even his enemies agreed that he was smart. He had one of the best parliaments ever, great administrator general. Nothing to complain of really as far as his personal life. But there's the issue of the two princes of the tower. But what really is interesting to me here is not the conclusion so much as the process that Professor Grant, or Inspector Grant, and a few friends that help him along the way get resources, process he goes through in coming to his conclusions. He starts with a children's history book, and then what we'd probably consider a high school history book. So those are good enough to refresh him on the general story. High school book gives a few more details, of course. And then he starts looking for more resources, one of the first being a biography of Richard III written by Sir Thomas More. Problem with that is, well, one, More was 8 years old when Richard died. At best, he might have seen Richard pass by somewhere. And two, More was definitely a partisan of the Tudors, who did their best to smear Richard III. So he has to keep digging more and more, trying to find original documents from not the Tudor era, but from when things were actually happening. during Edward IV's reign, which was a good 20 years, Richard's older brother. Get a feel for what people thought of him then and actual documentations of things that happened then leading up to Richard's own reign. So that was a very interesting part of this book for me. Almost more interesting than the murder, or at least, well, no, the princes were almost definitely murdered, but who did it? Well, Richard is a fair suspect, but there's a lot of questions to be asked about that, and he's not the only one. So, and it does make you think about what they put in popular history books. What is the term they come up with? Tony Patty? At any rate, it is a term he comes up with for historical facts that everyone knows about and everyone knows is true, but the historical documentation says is wrong. So, kind of makes you think about what you read in history and means that, well, of course, for the youngest scholars, might be harder to start with original documents. And so on that level, yeah, you might have to start with secondary, if not tertiary sources. But at a certain point, if you really want to know about history, you really do need to go to the primary sources and see what they say. So anyway, I quite enjoyed it. So glad I came back to Josephine Tey, and probably I'll read some more books from her. Don't know how soon, don't know specifically which ones, whether I'll do the rest of the Professor or Inspector Grant ones first, or what is it called? Miss Pym Investigates or something like that. That's a standalone. In any case, probably be coming back to Josephine Tey sooner than later since I enjoyed this so much. If you've read The Daughter of Time, I'd love to hear what you thought about it. I'd love to hear if you have recommendations for what my next Josephine Tey should be. Now that I have read The Man in the Queue and The Daughter of Time. And so I think that's it for this book review. So until next time, I hope we all stay safe and healthy. And as always, happy reading.